Good stuff, sir. Thank you for your information there. We are going to change gears for the last time tonight and move on into round number three, where we are talking about some other news from around the world of combat sports. So I want to talk about the story that's kind of been catching everyone's attention this week about one Gervonta Davis. And if you saw the video and you don't know, he was just charged with domestic violence for grabbing I think it is the mother of one of his children, and basically dragging her out of a crowded gymnasium where no one did anything. Schwan, did you see this video?
Yes, I did. I actually had a friend of the show, Steve Kim, noted boxing scribe, sent me it on DM. I was like, what is he sending me? And I was like, oh my God, this is bad. This is a bad look.
How bad is this for Gervonta Davis? Like, how bad of a look is it for him?
Well, to be honest, let's face it. He's promoted by a guy who's been known to do this kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, Floyd would never do this stuff in public. And I hate to say this, it's gonna make it sound like I'm misogynist. But the fact of the matter is, it's one thing between hearing about someone choking somebody up, hearing about somebody bullying somebody, and actually viewing it. It was the way he walked up and I mean, it looked like he almost picked her up off the ground and was gonna choke slam her. And it was just an ugly look. It was a bad look, and it's very concerning. I'm not saying I ever thought he was. I never thought he was that kind of guy, but now once you've seen this, it's going to be very hard to market him. It's very hard to sell him. It's very hard to, if you're any sort of decent person, to even really look at him because you saw this. You just saw. I mean, there's no other way to explain it other than the fact that you actually saw it. I'm not saying it's okay if you didn't see it. I'm not saying it's okay if it was behind closed doors. What I'm saying is when you see something happen, it's hard to ever get it outside your mind. It's hard to ever move on from it because that picture, that vision, and the feelings you have as a result are so intense. So it's hard to ever move past that. Not saying it should be moved past, but it's very hard to move past for that. And even if he's remorseful and regretful, it's going to be really hard to ever get past the fact that he just so casually and so aggressively grabbed her. I mean, it's like he was grabbing a guy, like she was a physical threat to him. Is the way he grabbed her, and the image of his bodyguards not stopping him, and the image of a group of men around there not stopping him is a very hard image to wipe out of the minds of women who cover sport, other female athletes who are in the sport, and mothers and sisters and aunts of girls who will be partaking in sport because they often, men are often viewed as protectors of women. And here's a man assaulting and grabbing a woman, and nobody from the media to the fighters to the security to Gervonta Davis's security seem to have any concern for her well-being or seem to be willing to put themselves in the line of fire to protect her well-being.
So, man, there's so much to kind of break down here. Because this was the thing that jumped out to me is that this was so brazen. Like, he didn't give a shit that there were cameras in the area. He knew everybody was watching. Does this hurt his stock as a boxer? Because he's right at the cusp of being a breakthrough star.
Well, first of all, he's not a star. They try to make it like seem like one, but he's not. He's missed weight. He hasn't fought real challengers. He's got a weak resume, and he's not really a big selling point. Floyd Mayweather keeps trying to convince us that he's a star, but he's really not. Floyd is trying to make him into a star. He is not. They're trying to pick fights to get him in position to where he can become a star by beating some name guys who don't have a chance to beat him or name guys who are now vulnerable. That's the game plan with Gervonta. What makes it hard to sell him now is the fact that in this environment, in this climate, you can't have suspicions of you doing that sort of thing. That hurts your earning potential. That hurts your standing in the public eye as a sportsman and as a man. And for people to actually have watched this video, and nobody just watched it once. I know I watched it 3 or 4 times, so I could, I was like, oh my God, what am I watching? And then there's tons of think pieces on it. There's tons of discussion on Twitter. And anytime he comes up for a fight now, this is going to be an issue. And I don't know that he has the maturity or the social skills to navigate those discussions with the delicacy and the care and the restraint necessary to even put up an image that he's regretful, remorseful, or capable of better. I mean, there's nothing he's going to say that's going to justify this. Oh, I lost my temper. Well, if you lost your temper like that in a in a stadium with people around you, with national TV cameras around you, what did you losing your temper in private look like? No matter if it's true or not, he's never going to be able to spin a story that's going to justify any of his behavior. And it's not the first time he's done something like that. He made a comment on Twitter one day about knocking a girl out or breaking her jaw if she did something to him like that. So this isn't the first time he's made comments like that. He's made misogynistic comments. He's made violent comments before. And when as this story goes further along, I'm sure someone will bring it up, and he's going to have something else to answer for. And I don't know that he has the maturity, the social skills, or the emotional IQ to handle the situation the way it needs to be handled appropriately. He didn't have it to handle the situation appropriately when he was there in public. So I don't know that he's going to have it in discussions when he's trying to rebrand his image or remarket himself. And once again, I have to say, I can't be shocked by him doing this. No offense, but people seem to not understand how much physical strength or being tough or being powerful enables you to walk around a certain kind of way. He's a world champ. I know he's a 135 or 140, whatever. He's a world championship boxer. He is in better shape and a better athlete, hits harder, and is faster than probably 95% of the people walking this earth. Of course he walks in a certain swagger. Of course he thinks he can do what he wants to do. No offense, one-on-one, whether you could grapple or not, 9 times out of 10, even against a guy who knows what they're doing, Gervonta Davis is probably going to kill somebody if he hits them. And most guys don't have the athleticism necessary, much less the durability, to stand up to him or stop him from doing what he wants. And plus, he's a millionaire, so he can make problems go away. So, of course, he has that sort of entitlement because he's physically superior to most people, for one, and two, he's financially superior to most people. And he's famous as well. He's not used to people checking him. He's not used to people stopping him. He's not used to being in situations that he can't buy out or shut up with money. So it doesn't shock me at all. What shocks me is the fact that he would do it. You know, I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt, no matter how they talk, no matter how they act. I always give people the benefit of the doubt when it comes to certain things. So I didn't think he would be the kind of person to yoke somebody up like that. And seeing it, it's going to be hard for him to convince people of the opposite, that he's not that kind of guy. And that's not the kind of guy he's always been. And I expect more stories to come out if there are any. And I expect more tweets to come out if there are any. And I expect this to be something that doesn't go away for a long period of time. And I don't know how he's going to manage it. Because unlike Floyd, who had rumors of him being abusive, we have videotape footage of you choking this woman up in front of God and the entire country without any sort of hesitancy or remorse in doing it.
Man, that's a great response there, because it was definitely a horrible situation that, seeing him get charged with domestic violence, I hope he really does suffer some consequences for his actions.
Yeah, I just want to say one more point about this. There's been a lot of, and this is just a general discussion. There's been a lot of discussion in this about how a lot of guys were around and they didn't do anything. And you know what? I understand what they're saying. As a person, if you know my parents, you know anybody who knows me, they say I'm always sticking my nose in the business that doesn't. They're like, some girl's getting attacked, somebody's beating somebody up. Oh, here comes Schwan. He's running across the freeway. He's inserting himself in a situation that he does not need to insert himself in. And while I do that, I understand 100% why other people don't do that. And I have a lot of female friends who have husbands or boyfriends who do things similar to what I do. And the first thing they told me is if I was there with my boyfriend or my husband and he tried to get up, I'd be grabbing on him to just sit his ass down, because I don't know the circumstances between them. I don't know if this goes on all the time between them. I don't know if she's going to go back to him. I don't want you risking your health or risking yourself for somebody who you don't know and you have no responsibility for when you have a wife, girlfriend, kids, whoever, people depending on you, and you're over here taking these extreme chances to prove a point. So I understand when people don't involve themselves in situations like that. It's one thing to involve yourself around a guy who's bigger and stronger than to you, especially if you don't train, if you're a regular dude. It's another thing to confront a world championship boxer. I don't care that he's 5'3" or 5'4" or whatever. If you've never sparred with a really good amateur or never sparred with a world-ranked pro or world championship boxer, you have no idea how hard they hit. You have no idea how strong they are. You have no idea how fast they are. I've done all three of them. It is stunning how incredibly superior and how incredibly helpless you are before this type of person. So I understand why somebody would not involve themselves in this situation. And if I split it around and Amanda Nunes came out there and she started choking me up in public, I can guarantee you a group of women would not step in on my behalf. They'd be like, she's a professional fighter. What am I supposed to do? So it's a discussion that I think needs to be had because we want to look out for each other. We want to protect each other. We want to do right by each other. But when you're dealing with somebody who's been in a situation like that, especially if it's been a continuously abusive situation, and I've dealt with people in those situations, you might be putting yourself at risk for something that's not going to stop, or something that's going to continue, or something that ends up backfiring on you, where they say you attack somebody, or you're the reason this happened, or you might just get hurt and they might walk off together, and your life quality of life has been impacted, or your life has been taken away, and these two people are still living together, still fighting together, still going through the same routine. So I just think it's important for us to have that discussion about the realities of interjecting yourself in a domestic violence situation. I'm not saying not to do it because I do it all the time, but I'm willing to take that risk. My mom isn't happy about it. My kid's mom isn't happy about it. My kids aren't happy about it, but that's just who I am. I understand why other people choose not to involve themselves in this situation. I understand why other people would just call the authorities. I understand why other people would just look the other way, because we're not talking about a movie. We're not talking about a TV show. This is real life with real life consequences. But once again, this is an example of when you have people in power or people with physical strength or physical power, the freedom they feel to treat people any sort of way, and the reaction people have to them doing things that are disrespectful or harmful to others. It's just a very jarring sight. And to be quite honest, this is probably the norm with people who have physical advantage over people. They tend to take their liberties with people. And I think the biggest thing I found in this is a lot of people, same thing with the Greg Hardy thing. A lot of people talk very harshly about Greg Hardy. A lot of people are going to talk very harshly about Gervonta Davis. But a lot of people, if they were there, would not have said or would not have done anything to stop that situation or interject in that situation. And me personally, I'm always very bothered by people who talk so harshly and call out other people when they have no willingness or interest in putting themselves in the line of fire. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying if you're going to call someone out, you better be sure that if you were in that circumstance, you'd be willing to ask a tough question or step in between the situation. And most people aren't. They just like to react after the fact and talk tough after the fact. And I can't stand those kind of people because I'm not that kind of person.
Good stuff there, sir. Good stuff. The last combat sports question I wanted to ask you was about Wilder Fury II. It's still a couple weeks out, but is the hype around this fight very low? Are people not as excited as they should be?
I think as the fight gets closer, you'll see the excitement build a little more. I think people are still hesitant that the fight's going to happen, but I think as you see it get closer, then Deontay Wilder is going to start ramping up his personality. Tyson Fury is going to start ramping up his personality, and that's when you're going to start seeing the real intensity between them at the face-offs. As the fight gets closer, the weight cuts get tighter, the sparring gets a little bit more intense, the conditioning gets a little more intense. That's when you start seeing that the respect start to melt away a little bit, and the civilness start to melt away a little bit, and get back into the uncivil, competitive nature of combat sports. And that's when you'll start seeing the uptick in the fight. It's really the best heavyweight fight that can be made right now. It's the biggest puncher in boxing versus the best heavyweight boxer in boxing. And they put on a very competitive, a very exciting fight, both strategically, technically, and in regards to the massive swings of emotion and excitement and action. So I think the fight right now is kind of simmering, but as it starts getting between another week or two out, that's when you're going to start seeing the big push for it. That's when you're going to start seeing the celebrities start talking about it a little bit more. That's when you start seeing the guys start going at each other's necks a little bit more, and that's when the interest is really going to start building. I still think a lot of people think the fight might not happen and something's going to come out, because in heavyweight fights and in boxing and mixed martial arts, people always tend to get hurt, get cut, tend to drop out. So I don't think a lot of people want to get too excited just yet. But when it starts seeming like it's inevitable the fight's going to happen, then that's when you're going to start seeing the big media push, and that's when you're going to start hear about the pay-per-view buys, and that's when you're going to start seeing them really open up and go after each other verbally and in some cases physically.
Well, we will be sure to have a more full and in-depth breakdown, probably the week of that pretty big fight there. The last combat sports thing I wanted to talk about was a reference to our Royal Rumble recap from a couple Sundays ago. We have almost 1,200 views on that, so I wanted to take a minute to say thank you for everyone taking the time to listen to that show. We will be doing
That is
more
very
pay-per-view.
impressive.
Yeah, I know, it was crazy. I wasn't expecting that. We will be doing more
Bro, like, wait a
pay-per-view
minute, 120. Wait, what's that
recaps.
extra zero doing there?
Exactly. I know
That
we're
would have
gonna be
been like,
doing
excuse
more.
me, Michael, am I seeing things or is this 1,200? I'm not sure.
This ain't right. Well, we will be doing more recaps like that. So, as always, thank you for supporting our content. Schwan, why don't you let
Oh,
everybody know what you're working on for this week? Go
side
ahead.
note. Thank you for. I want to thank you for your passion in not just covering mixed martial arts, but covering grappling and covering wrestling. It's a lot. It's a big plate of stuff that you cover and you go through, and the fact that you're so detailed and so passionate about it is very impressive to me. I know a lot of guys who do a lot of shows, but you can tell certain shows they mail it in, certain shows they didn't do their research in, and in regards to the show, regardless of the topic, you are always heavily invested. You might have 7 listeners or 700, but you're never going to shortchange them on your effort, on your research, on your attention to detail, or on just the passion you have for whatever you're talking about. And that's the sign of somebody who's dedicated to the sport and dedicated to being a good broadcaster and analyst. That regardless what platform they're on, how big the stage, how big the crowd, they're there to perform. And I commend you for always being able to perform nonstop. You never shortchange me, and I've listened to your show. You never shortchange anybody who listens to your show, and I commend you for that. We need more people who have that kind of consistency and that kind of passion, not just when it's a casually interesting event, but when it's just the meat and potatoes and talking about other aspects and tough aspects of the sport, which you highlight a lot.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that feedback, man. I really do. Let everybody know what you're working on.
I'm working on some more women's mixed martial arts part. I think I'm gonna do kind of highlight some of the stuff that I see camps doing wrong, and there's so much stuff. So I don't know if I'm gonna focus on Macy Barber or focus on Raquel Pennington and that terrible execution of a plan. Just so everybody knows, Raquel Pennington said she didn't expect Holly Holm to try and take her down or clinch her up against the cage. She paid a coach to prepare her, and he didn't prepare her for Holly Holm to clinch her up or take her down. That in and of itself tells you these guys are stealing money, and I got to write about it. But right now, what I'm very proud about is my article about the Green Arrow. The show just finished its 8-season run, and I broke down his strategies, techniques, and tools, i.e. his weapons, and his fight style, in a similar manner to what I did with Captain America probably about 6 or 8 months ago. I've gotten a lot of good reviews on it from people who are combat sports fans and from people who are fans of the show. And anybody who just likes mixed martial arts or combat and also has an interest in, live action comic book type nerd stuff, feel free to look it out. I mean, I'm breaking down a fictional character in the same way I break down fighters for fight camps or for MMA ratings. So you're actually getting walk through technical and strategical adjustments that he's making in these fight scenes. So I'm very proud of it, and I hope that anybody who's into combat sports or into comic books and live action comics takes time out to check it out. I'm very pleased with it, and I hope everybody else is as well.
Who are you gonna do next?
I think it's gonna be Black Widow. I still have a couple months of that, so I might throw. I've been putting out polls, seeing if anybody wanted me to do something else in between Black Widow, but I haven't got too much response right now. But I know I'm definitely gonna do on Black Widow. I've already kind of started breaking down gifts and started my routine of figuring out how I can post this in a manner that's technically accurate, but also entertaining for the fans of the character.
Awesome. So that's all we have for this week, Schwan. We will be back next week, sir. Thank you again for taking the time to be on the show with me.
My pleasure. Thank you for your patience, man. I know it's a handful with me, but I really appreciate it, being a part of the show.
No problem, sir. We'll be back next week. Have a great night, everyone.
All right. Have a good night.